Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of BacklogBusters, where normally I'm clearing games off my backlog and telling you if they're worth playing. But today we're actually talking about building up the backlog, as in I bought a bunch of new games and I want to talk about those. Just the games I picked up in the recent months and just going to show them off. Maybe it gives you an idea of a game you'd like to see. A lot of these are suggestions that y'all have given me, so trying to pick those up so I actually have a chance to play them and they'll go on the list of things I can actually play, not just on my list of things I should and have no access to. Starting, I guess, with the oldest first is how we'll do this. This one, 007 Tomorrow Never Dies. This was suggested by someone in the comments. I really didn't know what to expect, and after playing it for a few minutes, it is odd to control. And if you've ever gone back to play GoldenEye or Perfect Dark on the original consoles, those are already odd to control on the N64. This one was stranger, and I had a lot of trouble just getting through the first level. Most of the time when I'm playing these games, I'm playing the first 15-30 minutes, getting through like the first level or so, just to get an idea for how they are, especially if one like really impresses me in the opening, then it kind of moves up my list. This one I probably will not get to very soon because it was just really odd. It was really hard to control, and it runs at like a really stuttery classic frame rate. I was really impressed with the skiing level. Kind of came out of nowhere because you're just doing a third-person shooter with, no twin stick control, so it feels very odd to control at that time. But when you're skiing, it was like a kind of janky version of SSX where you're like shoving people as you go down the mountain and everything. I can admit I would have been excited by this as a kid. Like playing that level and doing the skiing, which is kind of the one thing I remember from that movie, was very nostalgic, very movie tie-in game. And so I do want to play more of this. I'm not sure it's shooting up the list at this point. So this one is Body Harvest. This is from the DMA Designs era. This has lineage back to Grand Theft Auto with a couple other games I have, like Space Station Silicon Valley. It's kind of in that list of early DMA design stuff that I'm very interested in because they've got a long history before they turned into making Grand Theft Auto games. And this one was extremely impressive. I mean, take all the same stuff I said about Tomorrow Never Dies. The controls are odd. It runs at a sub 10 frame rate, really framey and everything. But this is like a full open world where you land on a planet and you can get in and out of vehicles and drive them around. You can go in dungeons. You have exploration above ground and then underground. And it's just extremely impressive what an N64 game was able to do. Just the sheer attempt, what they're attempting here is so impressive because it feels like a big open world way before it really should have been possible or anyone really should have been trying it. It's extremely impressive, and I do want to check out more, even though I kind of get the feeling it's going to be a little janky, but wow, it's really interesting to see someone push this hard on the N64. The other N64 game I got was Mischief Makers, and this one's done by Treasure, who did the Gunstar Heroes games, which I haven't played much of. I have cartridges of that I really want to check out, but I've always just really heard good things about the games Treasure makes and how they're just great arcadey fun. And so just finding a copy of this, I was kind of convinced I should check it out because I haven't seen many N64 games that I recognize in stores in a long time. Most of them are 1,000 copies of Madden and NHL and all these other sports games. So finding one that's from a developer I recognize that's not a sports game, I usually pick it up when I see it. Let's move on to newer generations. So I sold a bunch of Xbox games and frankly a lot of my games as new consoles would come out, and I'd try to get the 360 or the PS3 or PS4 or Xbox One. So I've been trying to go back and collect a lot of these that I was missing. This is not one of those games. This is a game I remember hearing really cool things about, really good things about, and I always wanted to check out. And with Spider-Man on the mind, this is Ultimate Spider-Man. This is just one that I've been very excited to try out because it goes for a completely different style. It's not all photorealistic or trying to go for the movies or even go for anything else. And I don't really know much about the Ultimate Spider-Man universe, so I don't know if that has any bearing. But yeah, the fact you get to play as Venom and kind of destroy the city and play as Spider-Man and kind of save the city seems interesting. This next one is purely based on the Simpsons Hit and Run video I did because they had Crazy Taxi 3. And I'd heard that this was an exclusive to the original Xbox. You'll see I haven't cleaned some of these up and I've got to get around to getting stickers off. The original Xbox had a weird selection of just sequels to Dreamcast games. The same with Jet Set Radio Future that kind of came to that console and then went nowhere and has had no re-releases or anything. Same thing with Crazy Taxi 3. It came out, was kind of the sequel to Crazy Taxi 2 on the Dreamcast, and I don't believe it came anywhere else. It has all the same places from the first two games as I understand it. I definitely recognize one from the first game. I don't know if they've changed anything in it. And then it also has like a bunch of mini games and kind of fun side activities that I was kind of impressed with and didn't expect to have in here. It also actually taught me how to play the game in that there's like a flaming takeoff you can do from a kind of a stop position by like flicking drive and reverse back and forth or something. I didn't know that was a thing. That probably would have helped me when I was playing this at the arcade, the first game at the arcade. And so this one's just kind of cool. It's got new locations. It looks really nice. And so I'm kind of just excited to check that out and have like a definitive edition that has all the stuff from 1 and 2. The next one is another racing game. So somebody suggested this, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. I had already gotten recommendations for the Underground series, Underground 1 and 2, and then the Most Wanted series, and I picked those up, and those are on my list. But no one's ever mentioned Hot Pursuit 2 until very recently. Someone asked for Hot Pursuit 2, I found a copy and picked it up. I was kind of weirded out by how, this is gonna sound bad, but how bland it looks compared to like Underground and Most Wanted and all these other ones that are like stylized graphics or really like blown out visuals or something. This one is just kind of, it looks very plain. It looks very simple, but it has all the cops versus driver modes and everything in it. It definitely seemed fun, don't get me wrong, but I was just surprised at how this one didn't seem stylized in any way, and it seemed more plain, general street racing. So excited to check this one out and the rest of the Need for Speed games, because I admittedly have not played many of the Need for Speed games. This next one's kind of an odd one. I probably shouldn't have gotten this, but I kind of just wanted to fill out the shelf with this one because somebody recommended the second game, X2 Wolverine's Revenge, saying that it was an actual decent Wolverine game and good superhero action game. So I found this and then X2 Wolverine's Revenge next to each other, so I picked up both of them. From what I played so far, it's kind of just a beat 'em up, static camera and everything. It seemed like a basic movie tie-in. Nothing much to say about that one, but the one that was actually recommended to me, X2 Wolverine's Revenge, is actually really, really cool. I did not expect this. I had played way back in the day the 360 game, Origins Wolverine, based off that very poorly received movie. I remember that game actually playing really, really well. And somebody mentioned that X2 Wolverine's Revenge was kind of the template for that, or feels like it's going in the same direction as those games. And I gotta admit, this is really fun so far. It has all the good action game combat where you're, you know, getting new abilities and upgrading stuff, doing things with like Wolverine's senses, you're doing things with taking out claws, putting them away, being able to run faster with them put away. Like there's really interesting stuff in here, and I definitely want to check out more of this in the future. This next one is me just fully replacing games on my shelf that I sold off. I remember having a great time with Far Cry Instincts back in the day. It's very different when I booted it back up compared to like modern day Far Cries, but it still has elements of that, of the big open areas, being able to get in pretty much any vehicle and go around. It's got interesting, more stealth-focused stuff, like crawling under like a cabana and then rolling onto your back and being able to shoot through the floor. It feels very scripted in the opening areas. I remember it being very open and getting to do whatever I want, but now that I've played the opening again, I'm unsure of how much I'm just kind of conflating that in my memory. I really loved this game back in the day, so I really wanted to have it in case I want to check it back out. This one I'm unsure of. I see it in the store all the time. I've heard almost nothing about it. I only very, very recently talked to someone who actually played this and it had good things to say. Other than that, I've never heard someone mention this game. I've heard of people talking about the driver games in general and Driver San Francisco, but never this one. And this seems to be the one where you maybe get out of the car for the first time, or maybe that was a thing always. It definitely seems more open world. It seems like a game that is in that, wow, GTA's here, what can we do? I don't know how true that is. I know the series has been around for a while, so maybe there's more going on, but I've just always been curious about the driver games, and so I got this one to kind of check it out. This next one purely came from a recommendation. I've never really looked twice at this game. Apparently Barker really enjoyed this back in the day, so I still need to do some cleanup on here and actually remove all the stickers and stuff. A friend recommended this to me, and I do like racing games. This one is odd because you're like people with wheels on your arms and legs in Iron Man suit, and then you roll around. It does seem fun. You're doing tricks in this, but it is just the oddest like artwork on here, the oddest situation I could think of for a racing game. So I'm interested to check it out. I do really like racing games and want to play more of that. This next one was also a recommendation, the Futurama game. I was told when someone recommended this that it was way too expensive and I should not purchase it. And yes, it is way too expensive, but the PAL version actually is pretty cheap. So I got that version, and luckily there are ways to play PAL discs. So I'm excited to check it out. I do need to watch, I guess, all of Futurama before this. I was told that it does fit in the continuity somewhere, and you kind of need to know things about the show. So I know nothing about the show. So it'll be a while before I get to this one because I need to watch that. But it did in the opening feel a lot like The Simpsons the game on PS3 and Xbox 360, and then it feels not like a tie-in with loosely thrown on mechanics and a kind of thrown together story that's just callbacks to other episodes. It actually seems like it's a good story in the universe, and so I am excited to check that out. I always like those cel-shaded games. This is another one of those. These next ones, you'll start to notice a pattern here. Whenever I see a trailer for some new game or new series or remake of a series, I usually start going back to collect the rest of the games in that series. And they showed Star Ocean 2 is getting a remake, so I've been picking up the other Star Ocean game. I always like JRPGs that are set in sci-fi environments. Have I finished them? No, but I always enjoy them more than like the Knights in Shining Armor kind of stuff. So I am excited to check this out. It has a very slow opening, and I don't know if anybody else has played this and can tell me if it gets faster, but the opening felt extremely slow. The cutscenes kind of just trail off and always have like a weird pause towards the end where they just kind of stand around for a second and then it goes to the next scene. So it just felt like really slow moving at the start. The combat seemed like the other games that I played a little bit of, and then it's the action, kind of real-time combat with commands and stuff and special actions you can do in between. So I do like the premise, I like the location, but it was definitely a slow start. It's a 2-disc game, there's a lot of game to go here, so when I do get around to it, hopefully it picks up pretty soon. This next one I got was because of a documentary, actually. I was watching stuff over on NoClip, and they got to talking in the direction of Deus Ex, and mentioned that this used to be a Deus Ex game. Then the license got pulled away from them and they continued making it just under another name. And yes, it is extremely Deus Ex. You start in an environment where you kind of get attacked, you get cybernetically enhanced against your will and kind of wake up with all these things. You're sneaking through vents and entering key codes in no time. And I'm very excited to check this out. I had no idea about the lineage of this game and really want to see more of it. I got the entire Xenosaga trilogy, and I feel mixed about it because I haven't played any of them, and they've really gone up in price. But it all started when I saw Xenosaga 2 actually in stores for a pretty good deal, so I just kind of went down the rabbit hole, and so now I have all 3, and they all have a lot of discs and a lot of game to play through, so I'm not sure when I'll get to these, but I absolutely love Xenoblade 2 and Xenoblade 1, and I've also gotten a decent amount into Xenoblade 3 and also really enjoy that. So I've really enjoyed everything Monolith Soft has made so far that I've played, and I am very excited to play these. Especially, again, it is all sci-fi and space and big robots, and I always like those in JRPGs. Granted, again, I don't finish a lot of them, but I am committed. I will play through the Xenosaga trilogy at some point after I finish Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and move on from there, but I'm very excited for these. It's part of that lineage of the developer that I really like, and a lot of times once I find a dev that I'm really attached to and enjoy their games, I'll go back and collect the rest of their library just so I can experience them at some point. So I really want to check those out, but they're very long, so give me some time for those. The next one we'll go into are GameCube games. I think I mentioned this recently. GameCube's getting very hard to collect for. Games are getting really expensive, and I just hardly ever see these games in stores. And if they are, they're behind the counter in the special section where expensive games live, and they are not out just on the shelf. And if they are on the shelf, then they're unmarked copies with a little felt tip marker that says the name of the game on it. So I was very excited to find Wave Race Blue Storm actually on a shelf and not behind anything, and it's in pretty good condition. So I've really not played much Wave Race other than when I went back to look at Wave Race while doing the Diddy Kong racing video. I enjoyed what I played there. It was kind of cool to have the boats and the waves and everything, so I really wanted to check this out, and from what I played so far, it's very, very fun. I'm impressed with the waves. The loading screens and the little ripples might be the part I was most excited about so far. It's a racing game. I'm not sure. Y'all have to tell me if it does anything like super unique that we need to cover on the channel, but I'm just excited to play more of it and It may just be a fun multiplayer game if there's not something single player wise that I'll really get into. And then the next game, again, when I see GameCube games in stores, they are normally behind the shelf, and that's what Metroid Prime 2 Echoes was, behind the shelf. But it was actually for a pretty decent price, and I was very excited to find this. I have Prime 3, and then I'm still missing Prime 1, but I have the Switch remake. So I need to play through the Prime games. I know that, people have told me that, and this will make it a little easier to capture footage and get everything there. But very excited to play through this, played through the opening, and I was surprised with how well this controlled, because I've really only played with pointer controls and then gyro on the Switch version. The pointer controls I've done on, you know, the Wii with Metroid Prime 3, and then a little bit of the collection that I got digitally on the Wii U. And I was interested, does it feel weird on the GameCube controller? And it actually plays extremely well, which I guess I should have known with the lock-on. The cutscenes, compared to the first game that I have not finished, seemed like they're really just kind of start with a bang in here. So I'm very excited to see like how much lore and stuff is in this game. Really excited to have a like physical copy of this finally. I'm honestly surprised I found a DS game in the box, because anytime I see these, they're just loose cartridges. And I know this looks weird that it's just Star Wars Episode 3, but I keep seeing channels cover this game and mention that it's some kind of hidden gem and that it's actually worth looking at. So I picked it up, and yeah, the sprite work is really impressive. There's a whole skill tree of things. There's a bunch of extra mechanics layered on. I was kind of surprised with how deep it was and how fun it felt to play. I want to check out more, because the other thing I heard is that as you get further, there's 3D like dogfights in space. Now, a lot of the DS games I remember playing were either fully 3D or just 2D, and having the mix of them seems kind of cool. And it's kind of cool to see a licensed tie-in game for the DS especially that actually has some like buzz around it. So this next one I'm moving a little out of order, but as I mentioned, anytime I see a sequel get announced or a remaster, remake, I'm going to check out more games in the series, and Detective Pikachu is one I've never played or owned before. As far as I remember, this came out very, very late in the 3DS's life cycle. Like, the Switch was already out or about to come out, and that's why I'd skipped it initially. I was surprised how good for a 3DS game it looks. Even though it's a little flat and sparse with its environment, there's like depth of field when Pikachu talks to you. There's just some unique graphical flourishes, and there's some unique investigation stuff that feels very, very much like the Walking Dead Telltale series or any of those, in that you're walking around an environment, talking to people, searching for clues, and then you kind of have to do quick time events every once in a while. So it feels extremely similar to that, which is very odd to me. I did not expect it to be that much like one of those games, you know, without all the violence and blood and everything. I am excited to play another 3DS game, and it's one I missed. That's kind of a mainline Nintendo one, so I'm glad to finally have it. This game, I've never talked to anyone who's played, but I remember around the time of the Wii's launch, because I think this was the first game in this series was almost a launch title, and then this one I think added some extra stuff and expanded it. I don't fully know if it's a full sequel or improvements or kind of a 1.5. I remember the reviews and impressions of this game being extremely good and well received, and people, at least reviewers and videos I read, really being kind of transfixed by this game and being this like sublime experience that was just relaxing and fun and enjoyable. So I did play the beginning of this, and I will say I kind of get it. It is you like identifying fish, taking pictures, just kind of calmly going through the ocean, and I do always like a game where you go through and just scan some things like Mass Effect. This has a lot of that going on, and it does look very, very good. I can understand it being a showcase for the Wii initially, because it's a big full 3D game and world with all these water effects. So I kind of get it, but I do want to play more. And there is a story with you retrieving like a lost necklace, and then there's maybe this like ocean civilization that you're gonna explore in some form. It seems like it's very true to life, but there's a very much a like Atlantis looking city on the back here. So I have no idea how real it is or how semi it's trying to be versus like a fun exploring the ocean Indiana Jones kind of tale. But I am excited to check it out, because I, again, have never talked to anyone who's actually played this. Next, we're moving up in the generations. So we have our first 360 game this time, Stuntman Ignition. This is a game I remember playing a demo for, and admittedly, I was so angry at the demo for this game. I remember that very clearly. that the demo was so unforgiving, so difficult, and just me restarting over and over trying to nail these like stunts or get the 100% or get your stars up or even just complete it. And I remember that demo very strongly. I'm wondering now if I either have more patience or maybe we're better at games and this will be more fun. From the opening stuff I played, even though it was the opening, I did have a really good time with this. And I mainly picked this up because somebody did recommend the Stuntman games, mainly the PS2, the first one, but I have both of these now, so I do kind of want to check out the Stuntman series at some point. I do worry that I have a lot of racing games, and y'all may not want to see a bunch of racing games, but I do think this one is unique in that it's you trying to act out these movie scenes. It's these short levels, you can retry them a lot. It kind of reminds me of the same loop as like the Trials games, of that you make a lot of mistakes. It can be extremely frustrating, but wow, once you complete it, it feels great. So I'm kind of interested to check that one out, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. This one was also a recommendation. I played Toy Story 2. I liked that game, and it was a fun platformer. And then 3, I remember reviews at the time talking about this big toy box mode, and that's like half of what's on the box is Experience Toy Box mode. That I knew it was some open worldish thing, but I was not aware of how kind of complex it is, that you're like laying down buildings, you're doing all these quests. I thought it'd be something you explore and it's just a sandbox that you kind of goof around in, but there's a whole kind of story mode in the sandbox and things to customize and create and kind of build and explore, and it does seem very, very fun. But it felt a little more scripted scenarios and kind of like you are basically running and gunning, but you're throwing like little dodgeballs or something. I wasn't expecting that. It feels a little less of like open house that you're exploring, but I think that might be what the toy box mode is for. So I'm excited to play more of this. It does look really, really nice. And again, don't hear a lot of people talk about it. This next one is purely for me. Nobody wants me to play these games, it seems like. But I have, I think, all the Tenchu games on the PlayStation 1, and then I have some others on PS2 and Xbox. And I remembered owning this game, and then I sold it. I'm not sure if this was the best pickup because it does seem to heavily have an emphasis on like playing co-op with buddies. And so I can't do that anymore because all the multiplayer servers, I believe, are shut down for this from the notices I saw in game. This one I remember having really fun, kind of snappy controls. Going back to it, I can definitely see the From Software influences in it that I really didn't pay attention to the first time, but even the camera lock on, the way you attack, kind of the extra steps it takes to do anything in the game with your controls, all feels like early FromSoft games from the few I played. But I remember having a good time playing through the first level. It was still fun, and I then realized, oh, this game has a grappling hook. And any game that had a grappling hook in any gameplay trailers I would see, it was pretty much a guaranteed buy. And the second I saw that in this game, I remembered, yes, that's exactly why I got this game. It has all the ninja stealth stuff that the other Tenchu games have, and I've never played through any of the games. But again, it's one of the last ones in the series I didn't own. And then the last one for the 360 that I picked up with this big batch of games is X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition. This one's a little odd because the PS3 and I think the other editions are not uncaged. The 360 and maybe another version are the uncaged ones that do not cut out all the blood and gore and stuff like that, which is not really the reason I got this. It's because there was a deal on this one and not the PS3 version. But I did appreciate when I played a little bit of this game, maybe a demo back in the day, how brutal it is, because you are Wolverine and you literally have, 3 swords sticking out of each hand. So for you to just chop at someone and sparks fly does seem a little unrealistic, and I was impressed at the time with how good the combat felt. And going back to it now, all these years later, and actually playing some more of it, yeah, it feels very, very good to play. It's got just ridiculous quick time events and everything in there, but the minute-to-minute action feels very good to play, and it is kind of impressive, the, I don't know what you'd call it, like regeneration effect that Wolverine has, that you will literally get bullet holes in you and they'll fill back in as you're playing the game. And it is very impressive, the like tech that's on display here, even though it's kind of gross. It plays very well, and there's interesting things like springing to enemies that do take a different spin on like what I most closely relate it to is playing a Platinum game or a Bayonetta game, where you also have the same abilities here to perfect parry and do an attack and do some things like that did feel like those good action and slash games like this. So I'm very excited to play more of that. I guess we're just going full comic book with these because I also have Spider-Man Edge of Time. This is the second of the like Activision Beanox games that came out later. I have the other one that they made, so this kind of rounds that out, that I'll have both games, and I am interested to check these out. Again, with all the Spider-Man stuff, once the license runs out, then these games just disappear and are not available digitally or anywhere, which is sad to see. But booting this up, it is just Spider-Man and then Spider-Man 2099, which is very hot in movies right now. So I'm interested to check this out, mainly because it's more Spider-Man, and then also because it might semi-line up with some of the Spider-Verse stuff we've been seeing in the theaters, and I'm interested to see how close that is. One interesting thing about these Spider-Man games by Beanox is they feel a lot like the Arkham Asylum, Arkham City series of Batman games, in that you're kind of perching up on stuff and taking enemies down, but it also feels very close to the more open world Marvel Spider-Man for the PS4 and PS5. I'm not sure how much of that comes from the Sam Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3 games and how much of that carries over from here, but I was interested that a lot of the controls and abilities seemed very similar to the newer games, just without the open world aspect. And going more into the future, we have our first PS4 game, Star Ocean game. From what I played, it seems to have the same kind of combat that I've seen in the other Star Ocean games that I've been checking out, and it didn't seem to review all that well, so this may be one that not a lot of people care for, but I was still interested to check it out, and these games don't come out that frequently, so I'm kind of interested in just what Star Ocean does, if there's anything shared between these entries. The reason I was interested in these games was because of the spacefaring Star Ocean stuff, and I've yet to see much of space in either game. Granted, the last one, there was more space at the beginning, but you're on like a cruise ship, and then you see space pretty much as I turned it off from my time playing. This one I see no space, and it's just like a medieval town, and I assume space comes later. And then finally rounding out Star Ocean, we've got Star Ocean: The Divine Force for PS5, and this one is a little more interesting to start with because you can choose to be this mulleted guy, and when you play that character path line, you start in space and then crash land into like a medieval setting. Or you can choose to be this princess and you start in the medieval setting and then see someone crash land. I was very interested if you would need to play through this twice because the stories are so different, but in playing through the opening as both characters, there's like one conversation that happens and then it leads into them all meeting up. So it's kind of interesting. It doesn't seem like there's a huge reason to play through both. I'll be interested to see if that is the case, but there was some really cool mechanics with you just flying around and shooting around the environment, which is the main reason I was interested in getting this newer version, and they ran a sale for it. This one feels even more action-based and even more active and you know, out in the wild there. And then we move on to more current generation stuff. So I've got a couple Switch games. The first one is Goodbye World. I remember playing a demo for this. It's a little indie game, and it just looks amazing. I'm very interested in the story where it's these two people that are working on basically developing a game, and then you play sections of basically a Game Boy game in between time that I think is the game they're working on as it's being like play tested and things are being added to it. And I'm just really interested to see where this goes. I don't think it's super long. I don't know that a lot of people played it, but I just love the art style of this. I love the idea of following these two kind of game developers as they struggle with paying rent and keeping up jobs while they do this on the side. So it seems really, really interesting, and it was cool they had a physical edition. This one reminded me that Woot is still a thing. I don't know that I've ever ordered anything from Woot, but I got a notification that they were having a sale, and Cereza and the Lost Demon, or Bayonetta Origins, was on sale. So I've really liked the Bayonetta games in the past. I really didn't know what to think about this one. I still haven't picked up Bayonetta 3, but it's really, really beautiful with the storybook style. It's a completely different style of gameplay. It's telling this origin story and like this very storybook style with page flips happening. It's this watercolor aesthetic, these cool shading that's happening, and the way the story's told. So I'm very into this so far. It looks really, really cool, but I am interested to see what combat really looks like, because right now I've been trapping things with vines and then also picking up buckets of water and growing plants. So very out of the ordinary as it ramps up, but it's really, really cool, and I've been very impressed with it so far. And then of course the final one, Pikmin 4 came out, my physical copy came in, and yeah, I need to play more of this game. I've seen several of you in the comments on those Pikmin videos talking about Pikmin 4 and how you're enjoying it, or how it gets very scary later in the game. So I really want to check that out. I'm excited to see all the new characters and stuff, and really cool. The demo pulls into the full game, so you can just continue where you left off. If you're on the fence, you're not wasting any time playing the demo, which I always appreciate. I hate having to redo time I've spent in a demo. I'm glad more and more games are doing that. So that's all my recent pickups. If you saw anything here that you want me to cover sooner rather than later, definitely let me know and I'll add more votes to that. A lot of these are ones I picked up just because I'm interested in the series and haven't had actual recommendations, but hopefully if you see something you like, you'll let me know. And I'll probably do these semi-quarterly so I can build up a larger amount of games and go through in a longer video like this. But if y'all like a shorter video or more frequent updates, definitely let me know. This will at least let me pad out till my next video where I'm playing through some longer games. So thank y'all all so much for watching. Again, let me know if any of these games stand out to you and if there's any other games I should pick up or play. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you all so much for watching.